The rain hasn't stopped since I crossed the mountain pass, and by the time the gates of Blackmoor Estate grind open, I'm soaked through to something deeper than skin. I feel them before I see them. Wolves in human form posted along the stone perimeter wall like gargoyles given breath. 6, no 8. Positioned at intervals too precise to be casual. Their eyes track me the way a predator tracks something it hasn't decided to kill yet. Not hostile, worse, curious. I keep my hands visible. My boots hit gravel, then worn flagstone, and the estate rises out of the fog like something that was never meant to be found. Blackmoor is less a house than a declaration. Dark stone, iron frame windows catching no light, turrets softened by centuries of moss and rain. It's beautiful the way a jaw trap is beautiful. Engineered. Patient. The great hall swallows me whole. It's already full. Dozens of wolves gathered along trestle tables and stone pillars. Their conversations a low hum that vibrates in my chest like a second heartbeat. Candlelight catches on silver, on teeth, on the wet gleam of eyes turning toward the door. Toward me. The unaffiliated wolf. The rogue they let in because Summit Law demanded it. Someone presses a glass of dark wine into my hand. I take it because refusing a drink in a room full of predators is its own kind of weakness. Then the air changes. It's not a sound, it's a pressure, a shift in gravity that starts at the base of my skull and drops through my spine like a blade made of heat. My fingers tighten around the glass. Every nerve in my body fires at once, and I don't understand it. I don't understand why my wolf is clawing toward the surface for the first time in years, why my lungs have stopped working, why... Seren's eyes find him without permission. Calum Draven stands on the raised dais at the far end of the hall. He's mid-sentence, speaking to an elder at his left, and then he isn't. His head turns. Not slowly, not casually. The way an animal turns when it catches a scent that rewrites every instinct it has. Gold eyes. Pale, impossible gold locking onto mine across 60 feet of stone and smoke and silence. The glass shatters in my hand. I don't feel the cut. I feel him. A detonation in my blood. A recognition so violent it brings tears to my eyes before I can stop them. The wine pools at my feet like something spilled from a wound. The hall goes quiet. Every wolf in the room feels the shockwave, even if they don't understand what it is. But Calum understands. He's already moving. Down from the dais, through the crowd that parts for him the way water parts for a blade. He's taller than I expected, broader, and his face... God, his face holds nothing. No warmth, no surprise. Just a terrible, absolute certainty that makes my stomach drop. His hand closes around my wrist. The cut from the glass smears blood between our skin, and the bond screams. This woman is my fated mate. Calum's voice carries without effort, low and final as a death knell. She is Luna of Blackmoor. I open my mouth. Nothing comes out. He's already pulling a blade from his belt, short, ceremonial, older than anything in this room. He draws it across his own palm without flinching. Presses the wound to mine. Our blood meets, and something ancient and irreversible threads through me like roots breaking through stone. By blood and bond and pack law, he says, and the words aren't for me. They're for the witnesses. I claim her. The wolves bow. Every single one. A wave of submission rippling outward from where we stand. Heads dropping, throats bared. Calum Draven's gold eyes haven't left mine. And I realise with a horror so clean it almost feels like calm that I have been bound to a man I've never spoken to, in a ceremony I never agreed to, in front of 100 wolves who will remember this as law. My blood is on his hand. His is in mine. And the worst part, the part that makes me want to tear my own skin off, is that every single cell in my body is telling me yes. The servants don't speak to me. They move like water around stone, fluid, deliberate, avoiding contact, as they guide me through corridors lit by iron sconces that throw long shadows against walls older than anything I've seen. The stone here isn't decorative. It's structural, load-bearing, the kind of stone that was meant to keep things in. Seren Voss, Luna of Blackmoor. The thought tastes like rust. The rooms they bring me to are beautiful in the way a mausoleum is beautiful. Vaulted ceilings, Dark wood furniture polished to a mirror shine, heavy velvet drapes the colour of dried blood. A bed wide enough for 3 people. A copper bathtub near a window that overlooks nothing but fog and the black line of forest pressing close. I test the door the moment they leave. It locks from the outside. I press my forehead against the wood and breathe until the shaking stops. Calum comes after dark. No knock. The lock turns with a sound I feel in my teeth, and then he's there, filling the doorway with his shoulders and his silence, those pale gold eyes moving over the room before they land on me. I'm standing by the window. I haven't sat down since they brought me here. The claiming was necessary, he says, flat, clinical, like he's reading from a manual. Unaffiliated wolves at a summit are vulnerable. Any alpha present could have forced a bond. I acted first. You acted without asking. Something tightens along his jaw. Pack law doesn't require... I'm not asking about pack law. My voice is quieter than I want it to be. I'm asking why you think my blood was yours to take. Calum doesn't answer. The silence stretches until the candles on the mantel gutter in some invisible draft, and I watch his hands, large, scarred across the knuckles, curl and release at his sides. He takes a step closer, then another. Close enough that I catch the scent of him beneath the rain and pine, something warmer, darker, layered underneath like smoke trapped in fabric. My heartbeat shifts. I hate that he can hear it. His nostrils flare barely, reading me. And whatever he finds, the fear I can't quite bury, the way my pulse is doing something complicated and traitorous, makes him stop, mid-step. His whole body goes still with a control that looks like it costs him something vital. He steps back. You'll have everything you need here, he says, and leaves. The lock turns behind him. Dinner is held in a long hall with a table that seats 40. Seren sits at the head in a chair that was clearly placed there for her, and no one tells her she's allowed to refuse. The food is good. The company is. Suffocating. Pack members watch me with a curiosity that borders on clinical, their conversations dying whenever I look their way. But it's not me they're careful around. It's the far end of the hall where a set of double doors are bolted with iron bars thicker than my wrist. 3 wolves stand near them, positioned casually. Too casually. When I look directly at the doors, the woman across from me drops her gaze to her plate so fast she nearly knocks over her glass. I file that away in the place where I keep things that matter. Mira Holt appears at my elbow with a teapot, steam curling between us. Small, steady hands. Copper bracelet catching the light. She paused without looking at me, her voice pitched below the ambient noise of silverware and murmured conversation. Some doors at Blackmoor are locked for reasons that have nothing to do with safety. Her dark eyes meet mine for exactly 1 second, long enough for me to see the warning in them, long enough for me to understand that she's risking something by saying it. Then she moves on, refilling cups down the table as if nothing happened. I drink the tea. It tastes like chamomile and secrets, and beneath the floor, beneath the stone and the silence, I swear I feel something pulse, low and rhythmic and alive, like a heartbeat that doesn't belong to anyone in this room. The storm hits Blackmoor like a fist around midnight, and by morning the halls are soaked in grey light and the smell of wet stone. I don't go to breakfast. Mira finds me in the corridor outside my room, pretending to study a tapestry depicting wolves circling a mountain peak. She carries folded linens against her chest like armour and doesn't slow her pace. "Walk with me," she says. I fall into step beside her, and we move through the estate's skeleton. Servant passages narrow enough that my shoulders brush both walls, back staircases worn concave by decades of footsteps. The deeper we go, the colder the air becomes. Mira stops at a landing I haven't seen before. Below us a stairwell drops into darkness. The stone here is older, rougher, the mortar crumbling between blocks that predate the rest of the estate by what looks like a century. "The previous Alpha," Mira says quietly, her thumb worrying the copper bracelet. "Calum's father. The pack was told he died in challenge. Clean, honourable." She pauses. "He didn't." Thunder rolls through the walls. I wait. Whatever happened, it started down there. Her eyes drop to the stairwell. And it never ended. She won't go further. I can see it in the way her body angles away from the descent, every instinct pulling her back toward light and warmth. So I go alone, 12 steps down. Then a corridor, narrow and damp, lit by nothing. My wolf's eyes adjust, pulling shapes from shadow. An iron-bound door, ancient and sealed with a lock the size of my fist. The air here tastes of incense layered over something it's trying to bury. Damp earth. Old blood. And beneath both, unmistakable, wolf. Not a memory. Not residue. Something living. I press my palm flat against the stone beside the door and feel the same pulse I felt at dinner. That low, rhythmic tremor. Closer now. Stronger. Then my fingers find the grooves. Claw marks. Deep, desperate. Gouged into stone by something that wanted out badly enough to break its own hands. Trying. I climb back up with my heart slamming against my ribs. Seren stood in the west courtyard hours later because the rain felt like the only honest thing left at Blackmoor. It hit my face and didn't pretend to be gentle, didn't dress itself in ceremony or candlelight. Calum appeared without sound. One moment I was alone, the next, his scent, cedar, iron, something darker, cut through the rain like a blade. He didn't speak. He shrugged off his coat and draped it over my shoulders. The weight of it settled against me, warm from his body, and I hated the way my muscles relaxed into it. Hated the way the bond hummed low and sweet in my chest like it wanted me to lean back into him. I didn't. "You weren't at breakfast," he said. I wasn't hungry. Rain streaked down his jaw. His gold eyes watched me with something that wasn't command, something closer to exhaustion. He looked, for the first time, like a man carrying something he couldn't put down. "Blackmoor survives," Calum said slowly, "because some truths stay buried. That's not cruelty, that's architecture." Architecture! I tasted the word. That's a beautiful way to describe a cage. His jaw tightened. For a moment, one fractured, impossible moment, his hand lifted toward my face. I saw the impulse move through him like a current. His fingers stopped an inch from my cheek, then dropped. "Stop asking questions, Seren." Not a threat. A plea. And that was worse, because threats I could fight. But the raw edge in his voice, the way he said my name like it cost him something, that made me want to reach for him. And reaching for him meant letting go of the truth I could still feel, pulsing beneath my feet. He turned and walked back into the estate, rain darkening his shirt to black. I stood there with his coat on my shoulders and claw marks burned into my memory, and the absolute certainty that whatever Calum Draven had buried beneath this house was alive, was wolf, and was the reason he'd claimed me before I could get close enough to find it. The bond ached in my chest. I let it. Then I went inside to find Mira. Mira was waiting in the servants' corridor with her hands clasped so tight her knuckles had gone ash pale against her brown skin. She didn't speak. She held up a single iron key, old, heavy, its teeth worn to strange angles, and the copper bracelet on her wrist trembled with the shaking of her hand. I took the key. Our fingers touched, and hers were ice. "Third door past the stairwell," Mira whispered. "The one with no handle. Push left, then turn." She swallowed. "Seren, when you see, you'll understand why I couldn't tell you. You had to see." Then she stepped back into the shadows and was gone, and I was alone with the weight of stolen iron in my palm and the bond in my chest pulling tight like a warning. The lower corridor smelled of damp stone and something older. Iron oxide, animal musk, the sour tang of a body kept too long in one place. The torches down here were unlit. I navigated by the faint luminescence of lichen on the walls and the pulse beneath my bare feet, stronger now, close enough that I could feel it sinking with my own heartbeat. The third door had no handle. I pushed left, turned the key. The lock gave with a sound like bone cracking. Inside was a chamber carved from the mountain itself, raw stone, no windows, a single guttering oil lamp chained to the ceiling. And beneath that lamp, shackled to the floor by silver-laced chains that had worn the skin beneath them to something raw and glistening, was a wolf. Not shifted, a man, but barely. He was emaciated, silver-streaked hair hanging past hollow cheekbones, his bare torso a map of old scars and fresh abrasions where the chains had bitten. His eyes, when he lifted his head, were amber. Not Calum's pale gold, deeper, older, the same bloodline staring out from a face that had been forgotten on purpose. "You're the Luna." His voice was a ruin, gravel and disuse. "I can smell the bond on you." I couldn't speak. My throat had closed. Along the far wall I saw what Mira needed me to find. Documents pinned to the stone with iron nails. Succession records bearing the Blackmore seal. Sigils of formal Alpha challenge marked in blood that had long since gone brown. And a legal declaration of right that had never been countersigned. Never completed, never formally revoked. The man in chains followed my gaze. "My name is Aldrich Draven. I am Caelim's uncle, and I am the rightful alpha of this pack, by blood, by challenge, and by law." A breath that rattled. He did not defeat me. He did not depose me. He simply buried me. The floor tilted beneath my feet. Every formal greeting, every bowed head, every wolf who had submitted to Caelim in that great hall, all of it built on a man chained in the dark. I heard the footsteps too late. Caelim filled the doorway like a shadow-given mass. No guards visible behind him, though I'd heard them retreat at his command. His face was white, not with rage, with something worse. The raw, cornered terror of a man watching the single thread holding his world together snap in real time. His gold eyes moved from me to Aldrich to the documents on the wall, and something in his expression broke so quietly I almost missed it. "Seren." My name in his mouth. No plea this time. Flat. Final. "He's alive, Caelim." My voice didn't sound like mine. "He's been alive this whole time. Swear to me you won't speak of this." "No." The word hung between us like the last breath before a fall. Caelim closed his eyes. When he opened them, the gold had gone full amber. His wolf, not him. And he stepped aside to reveal a second chamber door I hadn't noticed, cut seamlessly into the stone. "Then I can't let you leave." He didn't touch me. He didn't have to. 2 guards materialized, and the bond in my chest screamed as I was moved. Not thrown, not dragged, placed into the adjoining chamber with a gentleness that made it so much worse. The door sealed, stone against stone. And the last thing I saw was his face through the narrowing gap, destroyed, furious, and so afraid it almost made me forgive him. Almost. Seren woke on a stone floor softened by nothing but a thin wool blanket that smelled of cedar and age. For 3 full breaths she didn't move, cataloguing the silence, the total suffocating absence of sound that told her exactly how deep beneath Blackmore she'd been placed. No rain, no wind, no wolves howling from the ridge, just her heartbeat and the faint drip of water somewhere she couldn't see. She sat up. The chamber was small, 8 paces by 6. She'd measure it soon enough, with a narrow cot pushed against the far wall, a pitcher of water on a stone ledge, and a single oil lamp that threw weak amber light across rough-hewn walls. Someone had folded a second blanket at the foot of the cot. Someone had thought about her comfort. That detail was the cruelest thing in the room. Seren stood, crossed to the door, pressed both palms flat against the iron and pushed until the bones in her wrists ached, then pounded. Not because she believed anyone would come, but because the sound of her own hands striking metal was proof she still existed. She hit it until her knuckles split, until the sting sharpened her thinking instead of scattering it. Then she stopped, wiped the blood on her jeans, and began mapping. The walls were solid. No seams, no loose mortar, no vented gaps she could feel with her fingertips. The lamp was bolted to its bracket. The water in the pitcher was clean. The cot frame was welded steel, not assembled, nothing to dismantle into a tool. He'd thought of everything, which meant he'd imagined putting someone here long before he'd imagined putting her here. That thought settled in her stomach like a stone. Caelim came hours later. She knew it was him before the lock turned. The bond pulled toward the door like a compass needle swinging north, and her body betrayed her with a rush of warmth she wanted to claw out of her own chest. He entered carrying a tray. Food, bandages, a small jar of salve. His eyes found her bleeding knuckles immediately, and something fractured across his expression before he locked it down. "Let me see your hands." "No." He set the tray on the cot. Stood there, too large for this room, the lamplight catching the amber in his eyes. Seren stayed against the far wall and let the silence work. "You made me Luna in front of 300 wolves," she said. "You put your blood in my mouth and called it sacred. and then you put me in a cage." His jaw tightened. "If the pack learns about Aldrich, civil war, rival challenges. I heard you the first time." She tilted her head, studying him the way she'd studied the walls. "But you didn't lock me down here because of the pack. You locked me here because I said no to you, and you have no idea what to do with someone who won't obey." The hit landed. She watched it move through him, the slight shift in his breathing, the way his hands curled at his sides. "I'm trying to protect you. You're trying to protect yourself. There's a difference, Calum. Learn it." He left without touching the salve. The vent opened 20 minutes later, a narrow grate near the floor that Seren hadn't found because it had been sealed from the other side. Mira's face appeared in the gap, barely visible, her copper bracelet catching the lamplight as she worked the screws loose. "I can get you out," Mira whispered, "but I need to know what you want. Justice. We take proof to the regional council. Vengeance. We tell every pack within 500 miles, or, Mira's dark eyes held steady, or you go back up there and make him choose. You over the secret, out loud, in front of everyone." Seren looked at her bruised hands. Thought about the way his face had broken when she'd said the word cage. Thought about Aldrich chained in the dark for years. "Option 3, she said, "but on my terms." Mira nodded once and began widening the passage. The passage spits Seren out into rain so cold it steals the air from her lungs. She stumbles, palms hitting wet stone, and Mira catches her elbow before she goes down. The inner courtyard stretches ahead, the ceremonial pyre at its centre, nothing but black timber and ash, under a sky that hasn't decided if it wants to be night or morning. The fog is low, thick, pressing against the estate walls like something breathing. Then the bells start. Not the deep, formal toll of a pack assembly. A sharp staccato alarm, metal on metal, ringing from the east tower and spreading like a disease through the compound. Lights flicker on in the upper windows. Voices carry, muffled and urgent. "Go," Seren tells Mira. "Get Aldrich ready. When I call for him, I need him standing." Mira hesitates for exactly 1 second. Then she's gone, swallowed by the dark passage behind them. Seren walks toward the pyre. The rain plasters her hair flat against her skull, finds every cut on her hands, runs into the bruises on her knuckles like it wants to remind her what she paid for the right to stand here. She doesn't run. She doesn't hide. She plants herself in the centre of the courtyard, in the exact spot where he'd cut her palm and spoken words over her blood 26 hours ago. And she waits. Calum comes from the north corridor. She hears him before she sees him. The sound of boots hitting stone too fast, and beneath it, something else. A growl that isn't coming from his throat, it's coming from his chest, from his bones. A vibration that distorts the air around him like heat off pavement. His eyes find her across the courtyard, and they are full amber. No gold left, no pretense of control. His jaw is wrong. Too sharp, too wide, and the tendons in his neck are corded with the effort of holding the shift halfway. He stops 10 feet from her, rain running down the planes of his face. "You're out." Not a question, a fractured observation. "I'm done being under your floor, Calum." His hands flex at his sides, claws, not fingers, the shift pulling at him like a tide he can barely resist. "You don't understand what happens if—" "I understand exactly what happens." Seren's voice doesn't shake. She's amazed by that. Inside her pulses a war drum, and the bond is screaming at her. Not to run, not to fight, but to close the distance between them and press her face into his neck, and let the wolf in her blood have what it wants. She refuses. "You tell them the truth, right now, or I do." Wolves are gathering. She can feel them at the edges of the courtyard, in doorways, on the upper balconies. Dozens of eyes catching the lamplight. The pack smelling the distress rolling off their alpha in waves. Calum's chest heaves. "If I do this, I lose everything." "You've already lost everything. You lost it the moment you chained your uncle to a wall and called yourself Alpha." The sound he makes is not human. It tears through the rain, raw and wrecked, and Seren watches something behind his eyes collapse. The architecture of justification he's been living inside for years, crumbling room by room. Then Calum Draven, Alpha of Blackmoor, drops to his knees on the wet stone. The courtyard goes silent. Even the rain seems to hesitate. "I claimed you. he says, voice scraped to nothing. Because the bond was the first thing in years I couldn't control. I couldn't bury it, couldn't strategize around it. He looks up at her and his eyes are shifting back. Amber bleeding into pale gold, the wolf retreating, leaving only the man. I don't deserve what I'm asking, but I'm asking. Seren stares down at him. The bond pulses between them, a living wire stretched to breaking. Bring him up, she says. Kylam closes his eyes. A breath. Then he turns his head toward the nearest guard and gives the order that will destroy his reign. Bring Aldrich Draven to the courtyard. The silence that follows is worse than the bells. Seren watches it ripple through the pack. Confusion first, then recognition, then a horror that spreads face by face as a thin, shackle-scarred man is led blinking into the grey, almost light of dawn. Aldrich stands unsteadily, Mira's hand on his arm, and the courtyard erupts into whispers that sound like wildfire catching. Kylam hasn't moved from his knees. Seren looks at him, this man who caged her, who caged his own blood, who built an empire on a locked door, and she feels the bond settle into something new, not trust, not forgiveness, something harder and more honest than either. Possibility with teeth. One chance. She says quietly enough that only he can hear. You earn every single day of it, and if you ever lock a door on me again, I won't confront you, Kylam. I'll burn Blackmoor to its foundations and walk away. He looks up at her, rain on his face, no mask left. Yes, Luna. She doesn't correct him. Not yet. Not because she's accepted it, but because the word for the first time sounds less like a title and more like a question. And she hasn't decided on the answer. Around them, the pack fractures and reforms, and dawn breaks like something that hasn't decided yet whether it's a beginning or an end.